This has been described as being the first time a government has ever put a migration strategy on paper. So everyone's saying, all these changes, it's terrible what's going on. I don't think they're bad at all. Welcome, guys. 11th of December 2023 was touted as a very big day because of the introduction of a 99-page reform booklet of immigration's 10-year strategy moving forward. This has been described as being the first time a government has ever put a migration strategy on paper. But what does it all mean? We are very lucky to have a panel in front of us today. So stay tuned and you'll hear about the key points of it. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for tuning in. As I said before, we have a special panel before us today. I've got at the end there Ana Maria Calvete, a immigration lawyer and migration agent director of business-sponsored visas and operations here at iMigration. And then we have a senior migration agent, Christina Amato, who works in the business-sponsored space. And then, of course, Jocelyn Diaz, director of GSM operations here, very senior and experienced migration agent. So welcome, guys. Welcome.
Thank you, Antony.
Thank you. We're so enthused to be here. So let's have a bit of a chat about these changes. So the purpose of this is going to be a bit of a discussion on this, and we're not going through all 99 pages. There's 8 key kind of reforms being introduced, but we're going to talk about, I guess, the stuff that people want to know about, because we've received many calls already from clients panicking, going, what does this mean? Am I not eligible anymore? So listen, a lot of these changes have not been introduced. So that's the first thing. You don't need to panic yet. My summation of this paper is it's not as bad as what people are making it out to be. Immigration always has big changes that come every 6 years or so. I mean, we've been doing this for over 10 years and there's been bigger changes than this. I think the way it's written out and the reasoning behind it makes it seem bigger than it appears. So we're going to try and perhaps give you a bit of interpretation on it and our perspective on it. So I guess we'll start first of all with who's read this paper, all 99 pages of it. I think Jocelyn put her hand up and said she was up for most of the night, and I know you guys have read a lot of it. I haven't quite read the whole thing, but I've been reading through what I believe is important in it. And I know that a few of you have already gone to some seminars on it already because you're members of the MIA. So I guess we'll start with, what is this migration strategy? It was very quick, I believe, to come into effect. Generally, the government takes a long time for any reform to happen, but the whole consultation process and everything happened quite quickly, I found, which can be a good thing or can be a bad thing. As you'll find out as we go on, there's a lot of proposed changes or changes that will happen, but there's no legislation there yet. So a lot of that still needs to be developed and whatnot. But there's 5 core strategies behind this migration strategy that is the backbone behind this. And it appears to be, in their words, it's the objective behind it is to raise living standards, ensure a fair go in the workplace, build stronger Australian communities, strengthen international relationships, and make a system work fast, efficient, and fair. So how do they reach those objectives? Well, they reach them by introducing 8 key areas that will enable that to happen. Now, let's start with the first area, which I think a lot of people are interested in, and that's because recently immigration just made those wonderful reforms to the 186 visa, basically opening up the door to anyone who has a 482 to get towards a 186. But it appears that the 482 visa will be disappearing within 12 months or so. So everyone's kind of panicking, going, shit, does that mean I can't get my PR? What's going to happen? So let's have a bit of a discussion about that first. So what have you come up? I'll address this to you guys, Ana Maria and Christina. What are your thoughts on these changes to the sponsored visas, temporary sponsored visas? It's now got a new name. We don't even know the subclass yet, but there seem to be 3 areas or 3 different streams that's going to occur. Ana Maria, I'll start with you first, if I can.
The government are calling them pathways, yes, but it seems that they're going to be streams. The main thing is that they are trying to present an alternative for people that are already in Australia that have skills, but they don't fall within the point system. So it will be like an opportunity for everyone to get permanent residency in an easier way, I guess. Now, they've already started implementing changes, even though the review has only been released on the 11th of December. And part of those changes include raising the temporary skill migration threshold. So it went from 53,900 to 70,000. They also implemented changes to the LMT. So now there's no need to advertise with the workforce website. And they have also
introduced that pathway to PR.
Exactly, the 186 for everyone under any sort of sponsor visas that have an ANSCO code linked to their occupation.
So what I've read and what they're intending to do, or what they are not intending, but they are going to do, is they're going to rid the 482. But they're going to adopt a lot of these changes that they've recently done, but package it up into new pathways, new streams. Now, the first one that they've discussed is the specialist skills pathway stream. Now, what we've read about that is that that's going to be a new pathway for high income threshold people who are going to be sponsored. Now, that they've touted is going to be sitting at about 135,000 a year. Is that correct?
Yes, but that's going to be indexed every year.
Yes, exactly. So not like at the moment how we've kind of got the Tismet that went from 53,900 to 70,000 and had sat at 53,900 for 9 years or so. This will be indexed annually. We don't know how, perhaps based on CPI. We're not too sure at this point of time. But it's basically saying what? Anyone on 135,000 or higher will have a relatively straightforward pathway to a sponsored visa?
Yes, but it won't be everyone because trades are not included in that group.
So there you go. So if a tradies, so therefore if you've got your, and I know a fair few tradies who earn a lot of money around that bracket, they won't be eligible. So does that mean there's another pathway for them? Perhaps?
Yes, they will fit within the core skills pathway, which will be the one that it's like for most occupations, and that one will include the TISMIT, so 70,000 or more. And other factors too. But we'll come to that one in a moment. So what else do we know about this specialist skills pathway stream of 135K? Processing time?
Yeah, so processing time is going to be sped up to 7 days.
Wow. That would be a dream, wouldn't it? Because who here knows of clients that have been waiting and waiting and waiting for their visas to come through, and they keep calling, going, how long's my visa going to take? How long's it going to take? Well, sometimes it's out of our control, actually, the majority of the time once it's lodged. So they're pledging a 7-day service standard on processing those visas. So it seems like this specialist stream,
it does have
sounds exciting.
A caveat. Part. Yeah, and it's at the moment they are anticipating that they're only going to give 3,000 spots for this visa. But it seems that that's the amount of visas that they've been granted with people over that salary.
I agree. It's not often that we do sponsorship for people over 135,000. So fair enough. So that's one stream that's coming into effect, or pathway, as you called it. What's the next one? They've got the core skills pathway stream. Let's hear a little bit about that. Also known as the CSOL, which used to exist. Remember the CSOL, Consolidated Sponsored Occupation List, which came out before the STSOL and MLTSSL. I'm very surprised why they've used the same abbreviation, but yes, they will have a new occupation list. Tell us about that occupation list, Christina. How's that going to come about? Who's going to choose that occupation list?
So it will be done by Jobs and Skills Australia, and it's supposed to be a bit more agile, so they'll update it as they see shortages come through, but it'll take about 12 months for it to update once they recognise the shortage. So 12 months
to update, and so we're saying, so basically we believe once it's introduced, that occupation list may change annually. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if it will change annually, but once they recognise the shortage, so say if they recognise a shortage in a certain occupation, then it will take 12 months for the list to update.
So what we're basically saying is it won't be changing more than once every 12 months. It's not going to change every few months if it takes perhaps 12 months for them to recognise a shortage.
Yeah, I guess it will depend on how often they are actually checking the market. But I will say that it will be updated more often than 12 months, every 12 months.
Now, this is really interesting because I remember when they introduced the MLTSSL and the STSOL, they did state the same. And that was introduced with Skill Select 1st of July 2012. And they said that these occupation lists will be changed every 6 months in line with shortages in the country, which is why we had the MLTSSL. True to form, in the first few years or so, there were a fair few changes that happened, and quite regularly. But then, I reckon hasn't changed the last 5-6 years or so. Nothing happened. So their intention is for this to occur. Whether it happens, let's see. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, what's that list going to look like? Any tips on where people might be able to see where are there shortages at the moment? Is that publicly available?
Yes. So if you want to check where the shortages are, you can go to Jobs and Skills Australia. Mm-hmm. It's a governmental website, and you can find shortages either like in the whole Australia or regionally or per state. Mm-hmm. So it's actually quite good to see how the market is going to move. They have already started with the research, and you can already see where the shortages are.
Okay, so that's good. So that's publicly available, so we can have a bit of a look on where that may be heading. Now, they've pretty much said that this new stream is not going to be introduced until the end of 2024.
I think that's if they are really working hard to get it done.
So it could be even later.
I think so. I think it will be at the end of 2024 or beginning of 2025.
All right, so that won't change for a while. So therefore, if people are eligible for 482 visas now, get onto it. Yes. That's what you're saying. Get onto it now if you're eligible. Don't delay, apply today.
And just to mention, they haven't mentioned anything about the 186 visa. They're not changing that. So even if you are applying now for a 482, you're going to have the pathway for the 186. And then I imagine that this one will also lead to the 186.
The 186 as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very good point to note. Now, there's also a third pathway that's going to be introduced, but they haven't given much details on that yet.
So that pathway is basically all the low-skill occupations that are at the moment working under labor agreements. And what they want to do is use an approach to these visas that is similar to what's happening with the labor agreements. That is like a tripartite approach, and then it will be the government, businesses, and the unions.
Yes. So we're looking at labor agreements there. Potentially that may also affect kind of Dharma 482s as well.
I think so. I think it will group those occupations.
But as per our reading, this is a long way off happening. They're still in consultation, and there's submissions to be made from people about that up until the end of next year, I believe. So this is not a change that's going to be happening within the next 12 months. So your labor agreements and your Dharma visas. So if you're a barista working up in the Northern Territory and you want to do a Dharma, you can still do that for at least another 12 months to 18 months, I'd be saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. And then that will include occupations where there will be salary concessions and things like that for those that need it. So, okay, so some pretty interesting changes there that are coming into effect. I've got a little table here out of their actual paper that kind of compared the kind of new system to kind of how it is at this point of time. And I think there were some other important points that I did note in that as well with some of these changes. And I think it's going to be relatively easy to switch between employers as well when it comes to these sponsored visas, which I think is really important, because I think we can all put our hand up on hearing horror stories on people being sponsored and having to stay there for 2 or previously 3 years if they're doing the transitional stream, and being exploited, being paid like shit, having to work 1 million hours a week and doing it just because they're desperate for their visa. So they're getting rid of that as well in one of these strategies.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are allowing now 482 visa holders to change sponsors, and in the past, at the moment, it's the applicants have 2 months to change sponsors. Now it's going to be 6 months.
Yeah.
And it seems that with these changes, they will also count that time work for another sponsors with the new sponsors for the PR.
Correct. So if you switch employer, you can then use time with employer A and employer B to get to your permanent residency. Now, there was an interesting part that I did note in one of these strategies or whatever they call it about people who hold these sponsored visas being able to try and find businesses who sponsor, because there's going to be some form of register, national register. Did you read about that, Christina?
Yeah, so there'll be like a publicly listed register of all of the businesses that hold approved sponsorship.
And also what occupations they've sponsored. Now, I'm not too much of a fan of this because being a business owner myself and here in other places, the last thing I would want is random people walking in saying, hey, I see that you sponsor chefs, or hi, I see that you sponsor whatever it may be. I want a job, I'm out of a job. And you just get droves of people coming in all the time when you don't have vacancies, because that's information now becomes publicly available. I wonder what's the rationale behind that.
I guess it's for the transparency of the process that they are trying to do. Avoid exploitation will come with like, okay, you are now publicly listed, so you will be easily...
It would be easy for people to kind of, well, you should be keeping on your toes because you're publicly on this register, so you should be doing the right thing, otherwise you're going to get named and shamed relatively easily. What I think is good about that is they have up to 180 days to find a new sponsor to transfer to, but they appear to retain work rights during that time to work for whoever they wish. But that time won't count towards their permanent residency, but it means they can still earn a crust whilst trying to find a sponsor, which I think is great news. So everyone's saying, all these changes, it's terrible, what's going on? I don't think they're bad at all. I think it's very helpful towards migrants in a lot of different ways, and also employers. Now let's talk about another area that people are discussing, unless you guys want to add anything else to the kind of sponsored kind of permanent residency, which is kind of your domain here, Jocelyn, points tests and stuff like that. What was your kind of takeaway on what you kind of started to read about this area? So they call it reshaping permanent skilled migration to drive long-term prosperity.
Yeah, so they talk about reviewing the points test, giving more weight to partner skills. So at the moment, if for general skill migration, if someone is including partner in the application, and if the partner has an eligible skills assessment and English skills, they can claim 10 points in the points test.
Yep.
So they're talking about giving more weight to partner skills. So I guess giving some either more points, more importance, or some kind of priority to those couples where both applicants are highly skilled.
Yeah, so it seems like there's going to be a big reform to the points test there. What else did you take out of that apart from partners and whatnot? What did you guys take out of the reforms to the points test and what they've...
I think they've also gonna give more weight to the experience in Australia. At the moment, it's a little bit unfair for some applicants that have 2 years of experience in Australia and 3 years overseas, and they can combine it. So I guess like that's also something that they will consider, because it will allow for people to go from graduate visa to immediately apply for a points visa instead of jumping to other temporary visas.
And what do they call that? They've used this phrase which I hadn't heard before. Temporary permanence, or no, what was the word they used? Permanently
temporary.
Temporary. And I think we all know people who have been in that situation of going on that student visa grind and a student visa grind and a student visa grind and then a graduate visa and then back to a student visa, which there are some changes happening there and whatnot. And what immigration's basically trying to do is say, we're happy to give you temporary visas if you have the skills and you'll do something useful with that. So if we're going to give you a temporary visa, we want you to work in a skilled occupation. Or if we're going to give you a sponsored visa, work well in that, and then we'll give you PR. It just doesn't want people coming here and just grinding away as kind of no-hopers, as I've heard them describe it. So what else have we seen in that? So this points test reform, this isn't something that's been announced yet. It's not happening in January, in February. Do we know when it's happening?
I think they're doing the submissions and like getting the public's opinion on this, and that will be released mid-June. who knows when that really will actually go into
So
place.
all of these people on looking at points tested visas who are worrying about it shouldn't necessarily be worrying too much yet, because the change isn't going to happen. But immigration can easily do what they're doing now and just drop the amount of occupations, or drop the ceiling that they're going to allocate to 190s or 189s to kind of stem the flow of people potentially doing points tested visas until this new framework is introduced. Do you think that they're going to be doing that? Because we know this program year, state nominated visas, it's gone from 30,000 spots to 10,000 spots. Do you think next program year they'll then be doing the same, because they'll be waiting for their new framework to come out? So do you essentially think general skilled migration at the moment is dead in the water?
Not dead, but it's slower. Also, the fact that invitation rounds for 189s are very, very sporadic. So it's been only one round of invitations for 189 visas.
And that was yesterday.
Yeah, and it was yesterday.
Yes, some lucky clients there. And hopefully you guys were lucky too. If not, don't give up yet.
But yeah, I think they are kind of making some time for all these changes to happen.
Yeah, so I guess that comes into what we've previously discussed before. Don't put all your eggs into one basket and think, I'm dead set on getting my 189 or my 190. You need to be diversifying your options, because at the moment, immigration's putting this big push on business-sponsored visas, which I completely understand why. I, for a while, have thought that general skilled migration isn't the best system, because you can nominate an occupation, have no work experience in it, but have excellent English, good points, get nominated or get your invitation, get your PR, and never ever work in that occupation. It doesn't solve the problem of, what's the point of having an occupation if you're not going to work in it? There's no condition generally that you have to work in the occupation or anything. So I definitely think there needs to be some changes there. And obviously that's why they're pushing more towards business-sponsored visas, because that's when you're theoretically supposed to be working in that occupation and helping out an Australian business.
But I guess part of the reform, or like this strategy, is that points test also brings the brightest and the best candidates to Australia, that they are actually gonna work in their occupations, that they actually already have some sort of experience in Australia or like in their field, and that they can bring their talent here. So I think part of that points test will change as like the system as it is, to improve the amount of people that are getting that visa and that they actually contribute in their occupations to the country.
I think that's a very fair point, because at the end of the day, that's what this new strategy is about. These new key objectives is about building a stronger Australia with more skilled people. They keep banging on about the fact that all the baby boomers are retiring and everything. We're going to have this big drop off in skills and whatnot. So we need to start preparing for that now. So let's see where that leads. Now, another area that we want to discuss, student visa reform and everything to do with that, and graduate visas. Now, they've called this Strengthening the Integrity and Quality of International Education. Tell us about that. It says, a package of integrity measures to lift the standards for international students and education providers while ensuring graduates help meet skill shortages and do not become permanently temporary. What's that about?
I think the intention is to make sure they grant visas to high quality students who really are going to do courses of study that will contribute to all this migration program and all this skill program.
Yeah, I mean, what I got out of this was they seem to kind of want to shut down the vet sector, or not shut it down, but slow it down to an extent, and focus more on higher education, because there seem to be a lot of regulations being introduced around the vet sector. Is it because of the barriers to entry are a lot lower than setting up a higher education school?
I think it's the fact that there's also like increasing number of low quality providers, and like people are using those courses
They
to
call them ghost schools, is
yeah.
their terminology.
Yeah, which is like it's not, although it brings money to the country, it's not what Australia is proud of offering, which is like good high quality education.
Because it doesn't skill the worker if you're enrolled in a school that you never need to attend and you just pay your fees to get your qualification.
Yeah, I think it's not that they're against the vet courses, it's just that they are going to regulate them more so people are not wasting their money.
Yeah, and there seems to be a lot of talk about regulation here, and there's also a consideration, which I find really interesting, on regulating education agents. Because at the moment, some education agents will just push someone into a course because that's the school or college that's giving the greatest commission that month. And that is what they're trying to stop and get education agents to act more in the interests of their client. So they're considering the OMARA to expand their powers to also monitor and sanction education agents. That'll be interesting to see if that happens. And if it does, I think it's going to change the game a lot with how education works in this country. So let's see where that takes us. But let's have a quick look in increased English requirements. Everyone has been panicking about IELTS for 485 visas. And rightfully so, I reckon. What do you think?
So they announced that they are going to increase the English requirement for temporary graduate visas from 6 overall in IELTS or equivalent to 6.5 overall, with nothing below 5.5.
When's that coming into effect? Do we know? That's not legislated yet, is it?
No.
But we believe it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
I think even earlier.
Early
They say
2024.
I think early 2024. Now, my concern about this is, what about the people that are about to graduate and whatnot? Or do you think there's going to be some form of transitional arrangements? Or you think it's just going to be bang, anyone who applies after this date is subject to this?
I wouldn't expect like a period of transition. I guess they will announce when it's going to happen and give people time to sit their IELTS if they need
Exactly. So I think the law is coming out early next year, but it might say this may come in effect from 1st of July. We hope not earlier, not like 1st of January. They say this is coming in effect on 1st of Feb.
Yeah.
But they will announce the change early in the year, I believe. When that will happen, we don't know yet. As well as the changes to the English with 485 visas, there are also some changes coming to age. Tell us about that for the graduate visas, Jocelyn.
So at the moment, the age limit to apply for a 485 is 50, so you need to be younger than 50. They announced that they're going to change that to younger than 35.
Okay, so younger than 35 or 35 inclusive, we're not quite sure yet, but around that 35 age mark. That's a very, very big change, and I'm wondering if they will have transitionals for that, because I don't know, my honest opinion here, I think the English they won't, but something like age, I feel they might say for any applicant who got their first student visa after X date.
Yes, you know, like they did with the 485 postgraduate, where they said if you had a student visa
after
before,
5th of November before 5th of November 2011 you weren't
yes.
eligible. I
think
feel they
maybe.
might do something like this for age, because
Yes.
I feel it would be horrid for those people who invested lots of money in there. Like, I mean, let's you master's degree, for example. I know lots of people in their mid-30s who come down and do a master's degree. And if they were to come and do a master's degree and had almost finished it, got one semester left, and then immigration introduced this change, and they've spent 40, 50, 60,000 on a master's degree, they're not going to be very happy if they're not eligible now for it. So let's watch that space. But once again, if people are affected by that, look at other visas where age is not an issue. For example, the 482 has no age limitation on it.
Yeah.
I wonder if the new business-sponsored stream or pathway will have no age limitation as well, the temporary one. But we'll see. So that's a very interesting one as well.
Yeah.
So what are your tips, very quickly, to those who are worrying about this?
Study hard.
Study hard. Easy for you. You're a native. So study hard. What else?
I guess try a lot of different mock tests.
Yep.
And don't focus only on IELTS unless you really need it.
Mm-hmm.
Like certain occupations will need only IELTS. But in general, maybe try PTE as well.
Yep. Anything else you can advise these clients? Perhaps different pathways which have lower levels of English, business-sponsored visas, which it's only, 5?
Yeah, if you can't get IELTS for the graduate visa, if you already have experience, try to get the 482.
Yeah, I think that's very good, because these will be happening. It's not myth. It's going to be introduced. It's not a rumor. It is the real deal. So start preparing. Stop putting off your English test. I think that's what I can say there. Final takeaways about all of this, because we can talk for hours and hours on this, but we just want to talk about these few little areas. But anything else you want to add that you've read so far? I'll go around to each of you. You first, Anna Maria.
I guess one of the purposes of this strategy is to make migration more accessible to the public, make it easier for applicants, business sponsors, However, migration is a very challenging and changing area of law. So I always suggest that you find at least some initial advice so that you can make your own pathway. And if you are planning to apply for any family visas, that's not going to change. This is not looking at that. So you're lucky.
Yes, family visas are not affected. So it's great. All right, beautiful. Christina?
I guess overall takeaway is not to be intimidated by the changes. I think that a lot of people are a bit overwhelmed about what's coming, but it sort of seems to benefit a lot of migrants more than not.
More than you think. I completely agree with you there. Jocelyn?
So first of all, as Ana Maria said, don't panic. This is not coming in effect immediately, and some of these changes are not legislated yet. So that will give applicants to find some other pathway or plan B or something that can rely on if they suddenly are not eligible for certain visa type.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think what I found out of this is, yes, I think they're taking with one hand but giving with another. So it's kind of more of a balancing act where people go, oh shit, they're putting up the English requirements for 485 to 6.5. Well, that's probably to hit up those people who are permanently temporary that they're trying to shut out. So instead, focus on business-sponsored visas, which you get on a 482 now, doesn't matter STSOL, MLT, SSL, after 2 years now instead of 3 years, you can get to permanent residency. So I think it's taking with one, giving with another. So it's now more than ever is time to start to formulate what's your plan, what do you really want to be doing, and when you go for a consultation, be upfront and honest on what your end game is, so can help strategize how you're going to get there. One final thing I thought was interesting is that there appears to be more focus now on regional sponsored visas. They still have no idea how they're going to make that system better and push people there more, but they've now announced as of yesterday, processing times are number one priority. And we saw firsthand with a 494 nomination lodged yesterday, allocation came within
10 minutes.
10 minutes. So I'm not saying everyone go and jump out on a 494 now, but it's something that will be processed very, very quickly if you consider it. So listen, there's going to be a lot more news coming out. This is just our interpretation on the paper. So it's our thoughts. Don't go and take that as legal advice and go make decisions of your livelihood and future based on what we're saying today, but you can feel free to discuss it with any of the guys here more at a future date. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for listening. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.